Hey guys, so welcome back to my YouTube channel. I haven't done a video in a hot ass minute, but today we are talking about my celiac story. This was a video that was requested by you guys, and so I wrote down all the questions that you guys had in my notebook. But yeah, I'll start with my story and then I will get to you guys' questions. So if you want to hear more about it, then just keep watching. If you guys have questions, definitely put them in the comments below or even just DM me about them. Message me on Instagram. I'm always happy to answer your questions. But basically, I think it was in 2011, I was traveling to Lebanon for 2 months, and then I kind of started getting some stomach pain. I had like a stomach ache, but you know, like I was 16, and just like any other 16-year-old, you probably just like ignore it because I was like, oh, it's just like probably the stomach flu, or I probably just ate something and it's gonna go away. And we get there, and you know, when you're traveling and you first get somewhere, sometimes you kind of like, you might have traveler's diarrhea, or you might not feel the best. So I really didn't feel good, and my stomach pain was like really bad, and it was there every day. And I like, honestly, it might be TMI for some of you, but I'm just gonna say it. I had the I had to run to the bathroom pretty often. I couldn't really hold it. So yeah, I guess I had like diarrhea pretty often. I had no appetite, and I was very tired. I had a lot of fatigue, and yeah, so everybody was like, oh, Leah, just give it a week, don't worry, you're gonna be okay. And I'm the type of person that gets anxious pretty easily. And I overthink as well. So I was like, okay, I'll try to wait this out, but we'll see. And then as time went on, I honestly started feeling worse and worse, and I legit had no appetite. Like, I remember my mom giving me like a piece of a pita bread, or like a menouche, this small, and I literally ate that, and I'm like, I can't eat anymore. So I was barely eating, but I constantly had to run to the washroom. And mind you, sometimes I actually didn't make it to the washroom, and I was at my grandmother's house, and the washroom is right next door to the room that I was sleeping in. So the distance was not that far. Okay, so I just put my hair up because it is so hot and humid, and it's raining right now. But anyways, I was in a lot of pain, and honestly, I have never, like when I say never, I have never felt stomach pain like that in my life. And I quickly started losing a lot of weight. So I generally, like, I've never weighed more than 115 pounds, I would say. Like, I'm usually around 110, and I ended up losing like 15 pounds in 2 to 3 weeks. I honestly looked really sick, in my opinion, and I looked so skinny and frail. I think that because I'm generally someone who overthinks, or like, you know, gets in my head a little bit. My mom kind of had a hard time believing me, and they were like, okay, like they did take me to the doctors, and I think I went to maybe 3 or 4 different doctors in Lebanon, but one of them was like, oh, it's just like, it's in your head, like it's mental, it's your anxiety, so you just need to relax and stop stressing. And he just like, he cracked my neck. Like, honestly, the amount of different things that I did, like, I can't even get through them all. But anyways, and then I also had another doctor that I went to that told me that I had IBS. Honestly, it was mostly people saying that it was like in my head. And so whatever, I carried on through the summer, but I still wasn't feeling well. And at the time, I was in a relationship, and I honestly felt like my relationship really struggled during that time because I felt so crappy. And for those of you who don't know, celiac does affect your mental health. But at the time, I didn't know that I had celiac disease. So I was like, why do I feel like this? I was always crying. I was always tired. I was always sleeping. Yeah, so honestly, I was depressed. And obviously, I know that now. And I think back then, like, I kind of had a feeling as well. But you're kind of in denial. And I think the reason for that, too, is because obviously at the beginning, I didn't realize that I was, because I'm like, I know something is wrong with me, and I feel this, like, I can feel it, and you know your body, right? So I'm like, I'm tired of people telling me that it's just in my head, and that I'm depressed, and crazy, and things like that. So I really didn't want to believe it, and I'm like, I know that there's something wrong. But now, like after I found out what I had and when I read on the symptoms and everything like that, I realized that depression is actually something that often associates undiagnosed celiac, because it does affect your mental health, it does affect your brain, and it also affects other organs in the body. I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, and it's so crazy because I didn't realize, obviously in the moment, just how like some of the things that I was thinking, or like the thoughts were running through my head, honestly didn't really make sense. But I think it's because you're so messed up, and you're like, I don't understand, like there's something wrong with me, nobody believes me, I don't know what's going on, and you're in so much pain. And I felt like I was alone, and I thought that I was the only one that felt that way. But obviously after being diagnosed and after hearing other celiac stories, I know that there's literally some celiacs who have the exact same story as me. And yeah, you just start thinking that like you start thinking that so many things are wrong with you. You're like, what if I have this, what if I have that? And like your worst enemy is Googling things, but sometimes you can't help it, especially when the diagnosis time takes so long. So after I came back from Lebanon, I was still feeling sick. I wasn't feeling good, and I talked to my friends about it. I talked to my boyfriend at the time about it, and obviously nobody knew what was going on. And so it was really hard. Like it was hard for me, but I'm sure that it was hard for them too. And part of me, honestly, to this day, like sometimes I still feel so guilty about it, because I felt so bad that like in terms of like a relationship, when you first get into a relationship, it's supposed to be fun and it's supposed to be exciting, and you want to spend your time with that person and have fun with them. And I just felt that, like, because I felt so sick and because my mental health was impacted and everything, I didn't even feel like myself. And there was people who told me, like, I don't feel like this is the Leah that we know. And it's hard to hear that, but even myself, I'm like, I know this is not me. And it was so hard because you want to be your best self, and you want to be yourself, and you want to show up for your friends, and you want to show up for your relationships. But it was just like a very difficult time for me, and I also had like other things going on in my life. But so I think it was just like a lot for me to take in. And yeah, to this day sometimes I still feel so guilty about it, because I'm like, I feel bad that I put other people through that with me, especially like my friends and my relationship at the time, because I don't think that that's like something you would necessarily want to go through when you first start dating someone, let's say. But at the same time, I do know that I also didn't know what was going on, and none of us knew. So I guess there was nothing that you could really change. But one thing that I do know for sure is that had this happened to me at an older age, like if I got diagnosed or started feeling pain when I was maybe in my 20s or at my age now, I do know that I feel like it would have been a little bit different. I don't think I would have been as anxious, and I don't think that I would have I know the pain for sure would have been just as bad, but I think that there are some things that I probably would have handled differently. But again, that comes with experience and age, and there's nothing you could do. And at the time, it's just the way that I felt and the way that it was. So yeah, so I was still feeling pretty bad, and I got to a point where I felt that I think I'm just gonna have to like deal with this for the rest of my life, because no doctor was able to figure out what I had. I actually went to 15 different doctors in total, and that includes my family doctor. When I got back, I went to go talk to her, and she actually told my dad that she thinks that it's in my head, and that he should take me to a psychologist, and actually also gave me antidepressants that I did not want to take. So I actually think that I took one or two of them, and I ended up throwing the box out, because I knew that something was wrong. Like, okay, fine, maybe I was depressed, but I knew there was a reason for it. And so because my own family doctor wasn't even testing me for anything or taking it super seriously, I stopped going to see that doctor, and I kind of started going to different walk-ins. I kept trying to explain my symptoms, but the thing with celiac is that the symptoms are also so vague, and there's still not enough awareness about it, so it's so hard to diagnose. And yeah, pretty much fast forward to 4 years later, I actually kept getting sent to do, every time I would see a doctor, I kept getting sent to do the same test. I would do stool tests, and they would also make me do ultrasounds. And so I kept seeing the same technician because it was right across the street from my house. And we literally all pretty much became friends because I was seeing her all the time. And so that last time that I saw her, she was like, I love seeing you, but why do they keep sending you to do the same ultrasounds over and over again? And so we got to talking, and I was kind of explaining to her like my symptoms and everything like that. And then as she was trying to do my ultrasound, my abdominal ultrasound, she's like, I can't see anything. There's so much gas in your stomach that I can't see anything. So yeah, she kept trying to like press down, and at the same time, she was pretty much telling me about her friend, and she's like, did you ever think that maybe you have some sort of allergy? Like, I have a friend that has a wheat allergy, and before she figured that out, she was having like really bad stomach pain, and so maybe you have something like that. And then I was like, oh, like, I don't know, maybe I should look into it. So when I went home, I Googled wheat allergy, and I just kept doing research because at this point, like, I was Googling everything. And I had been for like the last 4 years, but I didn't know it was going to take that long to get diagnosed. And so I stumbled upon celiac disease by doing that, by researching a wheat allergy. And then I read all the symptoms, and I was like, I have every single one of these symptoms. So what I ended up doing is I went into a walk-in clinic across the street from my house, and I went to go see a doctor, and I told him, I straight up, because I was so fed up at that point, I was like, listen, I have all these symptoms. I heard about celiac disease, I looked it up, and I have all the symptoms. This has been going on for like this many years. I've seen this many doctors. Can you please test me for celiac disease? And that doctor finally agreed with me. He is now actually my family doctor. And he was open to it and said, okay, I will test you for it. And lo and behold, came back positive. And yeah, that is pretty much the gist of the story. But I can get into like more details in regards to like symptoms, diagnosis, and how it affected me on a deeper level by answering you guys' questions. But yeah, so it took me 4 years to get diagnosed. The average diagnosis, guys, is 10 years, which is so freaking crazy because 4 years felt like forever. And sometimes it makes me, I try not to go back on the past, but it makes me so sad because I'm like, I wish that I knew so much sooner what I had, because I feel like I would have gotten back to feeling like myself so much sooner. And sometimes I feel like I wish, not that you have to explain yourself to anyone, but I was like, sometimes I wish that I could like go back and, like explain to certain people why I was the way I was and why things went down the way that they did. Or, just like explain a little bit more like, yeah, this is why I, wasn't really like in the right headspace, wasn't thinking straight. Because now even I think back on like the way that I was processing things, and I'm like, honestly, like it didn't make sense. But it really does affect your mental health and your brain health, because even now, like whenever I get gluten, which I'll talk about a little bit more, my sisters will notice that there's that sometimes there is a shift with my mood. Like I'll feel down, or I'll be like crying more, or I'll get like irritated. So yeah, I just sometimes you wish you're like, I wish I knew this earlier, because it would have made so much more sense at the time, and it would have like made some things so much easier. But you know what, it is what it is. Everything happens for a reason. You can't go back to the past. And I know that if anybody is watching this, my friends, my family, anybody that was with me during that time or went through it with me, everybody knows that I love you guys, and I really appreciate everybody who took the time and stood by me, even though sometimes it was hard, and I acknowledge that it was hard for you guys too, but I really do appreciate it. So that is that, guys. I'm gonna get into the questions. I'm sorry if this video kind of went on. I honestly like started filming without having any, like, I didn't really have an agenda for it. I just kind of went with it. I wanted it to be like pretty raw and just spoke my mind and said what's on my heart.